sustainability. For me, in the last years developing my research, I have identified 6 fundamental ease drivers for 21st century organization. What I call the factors, the key value factors for the success of 21st century organization. And very quickly, I would like to introduce this conference, starting with the introduction of these factors that I believe are very important. The factors are experience, and I will go very quickly through each of them. Experience, emotions, energy, ethics, and environment. I think these 5 fundamental value drivers will be the key dimension that will affect the value creation dynamics in the 21st century, are the key dimension that organization, the soft dimension that organization will increasingly need to manage. And let me very quickly go through each of them. Experience. When we think about experience, what do I mean for experience? I believe, this is not just my opinion, that more and more we are living in an experience-based economy. What do we buy every day when we choose a product? What we buy is basically an experience, and what we want more and more are experiences. When we buy a suit, of course we are not anymore interested just in the material, in the functional dimension of the suit, but what we are really looking for is the experience that the suit can give us. And today, around the idea of building experiences, today many businesses are developing, and more in the future what we will see is the capacity of creating value, and sustainable value will be increasingly related to the ability of creating experiences. Here there is just one example. there are different examples. For example, think about coffee. Coffee is a traditional commodity. But what will push you to pay €3, €5 for a cup of coffee, an espresso, is the experience related to the coffee. Illy, basically, which is considered the best coffee producer in Italy, they started many years ago in creating experiences when you go to a traditional Italian bar and you have the espresso. And the idea was that you could be drinking an espresso in an artistic way. And indeed, what they did, they asked different artists to design the coffee cups. And this is today even more in growing. They created a special shop, and they are trying to create special experiences when you go and drink coffee. So the idea is that the value of what we buy, what we create, the capacity of creating value will be increasingly related to the ability of creating experiences around product, but more generally around the organization. And about experiences is basically about the ability of managing and creating intangible value. And when we think about knowledge, innovation, and sustainability, the experience, I believe, would be a key value drivers in the future. Second E for success for 21st century organization. The second E is emotion. Emotion. Those that know my research more recently have been more and more focusing my attention on the idea of emotion. Emotion is a component that traditionally in management studies, in organization, has not really been taken account. Basically, the idea is the emotions is something that needs to be reduced, controlled as much as possible. It's not something that needs to be exploited as an important value drivers. Of course, more recently in organizational theory, there's been much more attention. Maslow, of course, investigated many years ago the role of psychological dimension. But when I'm speaking here about emotion, what I believe is that emotion will increasingly become a key value drivers for 21st century organization. And here I like always to quote Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, with his obsession, what he usually used to say was that basically for me it's not important that my people have technical knowledge. What is really important for me is that people can fall in love with my organization. What is really critical in my organization is the concept of emotive, to be able to emote the organization, to create emotion, and basically to disclose this energy. And so, starting from this consideration, when we think about the future, looking in the future, what I believe will be increasingly more important for organizations is not anymore just to manage technical knowledge, but will be increasingly important to manage what I call emotive knowledge. And the idea here is that organization, this is also related to the new discoveries of neuroscience. So the idea is that when we think about technical knowledge today is more or less a commodity. We can buy knowledge everywhere, and actually we will always find someone that knows what we know, and probably knows better of what we know. So at the end, what will make a difference within the organization is not only the technical knowledge, but it's the ability to disclose the emotion, the feeling, to combine the technical knowledge with the capacity of being in touch with the heart of the organization. And starting from this consideration, I believe that, and this is the concept that I've introduced in my recent book, The Value of Arts for Business, what organization will increasingly need to manage is not only the know-how, so the ability of doing things, but the know-feel. How do we make sure that people are in touch with their emotion? How we can make sure that within the organization we can disclose this emotive power? And in order to do that, what we will need, I believe, to move forward is from the concept of knowledge workers, that I consider a typical and critical concept of the modern management paradigm, towards a new concept, which is what I call artful workers. I mean, workers that are able not only to use their know-how, their technical knowledge, but are also able to be involved, engaged in what they do, and then use their own emotion for achieving their result. And at the end of the day, what makes a difference for high performance is the passion we put in whatever we do. And this is true in many cases, examples that we can find in many businesses, in many entrepreneurs. This is the case of organizations that today are learning, like Google or Apple, that are learning and looking for new approaches for managing this dimension that are extremely soft, but extremely more and more important. The third dimension, which is somehow very strictly related to the emotion, is energy. Energy is a capacity for action, and what we need within the organization increasingly is the energy. How we can make sure that people are somehow engaged in what they do, are able to fall in love with the organization, be attached with the organization, so to create a kind of tension for action. And here I have a very short video that helps to understand what I'm speaking about, and this is the video from Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft. And Steve Ballmer, in his last convention, he presented himself like this. So he looks quite excited. I was thinking to start the session like this, but then I thought, well, it would be not very appropriate. Too much exciting. Of course he's tired. I would be tired too.
I love this company. Yeah!
So I love this company. I mean, I like this video because somehow is able, in a metaphorical way, in a logical way, to express what is the real key driver for the future of this big corporation, for most of the company. We are living in a very turbulent environment, chaotic, ambiguous, uncertain, high-risk environment. And the problem is that within the organization we have high level of risk, high level of tension, high level of depression. The kind of negative energy that is growing is very high. So what makes a difference in order to be innovative, in order to employ and deploy the knowledge, in order to be sustainable and to create a better working environment, is basically to be able to disclose this energy. And we have this experience at a personal level every morning when we get up in the morning, and if we feel full of energy, we feel productive. And then, again, productivity is a key dimension. But how can we manage and disclose this energy? And this will be increasingly a key dimension, which is strongly related to the concept of emotion that I was addressing before. And then, the fourth E, ethics. If we think about the financial crisis, it's basically a problem of ethics. Today, organizations, in order to be high performance, they need to learn how to change the attitudes within the organization, to drive the right behaviors of their people. And so, dimension related to ethics, related to values, beliefs, mindset will be increasingly important. And in the banking sector, we could bring a lot of examples about the importance of ethics. And then here, the point is, what do I mean? What do we mean for ethics? That basically, organizations will be challenged in order to create value in the 21st century. They will be challenged to create a social responsible culture and to make sure that people understand and live this culture. The fifth dimension is environment. And when I refer here to environment, what I like to stress here is that organization increasingly will need to move from a focus on output to a focus on outcomes. So the idea for the organization is to understand what is the impacts that they are generating in the society, how they can be more socially responsible. And the idea is not just be focusing on what they produce, but to understand what kind of dynamics they activate in the society. And of course, when we speak about the environment, and this is related to the previous dimension, we are also, I believe, we will need, more importantly and more in the future, to understand how we can shape better workplaces where people can really be engaged. And engagement is my last sixth dimension, which is somehow the combination of the previous one. In the future, in order to be, I believe, innovative, in order to be sustainable as a business, in order to develop further knowledge and apply our knowledge, I think what we will need is the engagement of our people. We will need to understand how we can make sure that people come in the organization and give the best of themselves. Because the problem today is not that people don't know what to do. I mean, at least this is the most of the problems in the Western organization. But how can we make sure that the people are willing to give the best of themselves in order to achieve the results? They are willing to use their creativity, to use their energy in order to achieve results. So these 6 E's are somehow the key value drivers, I believe, in the next future. And this is what basically in my research in the last year I've been developing, and in particular I've been working on this new discipline that I call arts-based management, which is about how to bring the arts within the organization in order to manage this E dimension, in order to support organizational value creation. But today, after this presentation, we will be hearing different perspectives on knowledge management, on how knowledge, innovation and sustainability can be related to each other from a micro and macro perspective, and this is the kind of platform that we will have in the next 2 days and a half. But before going, well, we have in Italy we have a different style. Actually, if we would have been in the UK, as I don't know many friends from UK we would have been starting this session, say, in case of fire, in case of alarm, this is not a test, it is real, so please go there. This doesn't work in Italy. So if we have an earthquake, just run away in the right direction. So going out there.
You're on your own.
You're on your own. Yes, you are on your own. But, well, this is not really like that. But anyway, in your package, this year, I thought to include in this envelope 2 things. And one has a small piece of paper. And what I would like to ask you with this small piece of paper, not to use for taking your notes, of course you can do if you like, but what I would like is basically to challenge a little bit your creativity. So I would like you here to write either a key question for the future of knowledge management and intellectual capital, as I believe somehow this research stream is maturing. So we need to understand what are the new direction, so what are the key questions for the future. And for those that are much more creative, as I hope you are, and are not just boring academics like I am, and I would like you to even write or drawing a nice pictures which somehow represent the key dimension or the key most important knowledge drivers that you think will be important in the future to focus the attention on. So please use this either to write your key question or to write your quotation and a nice drawing. And tomorrow we will be in another session. We will have a metaphor wall where we can stick all this picture. And the second thing that you find in your delegate baggage is a small magnet representing Matera. It is not just a souvenir for you, but what I would like you to do at the end of this conference, somehow it will be nice if you can write on the back, but this is quite a little bit small, but you can try to do that. I would like you to write here what is the experience that you had during this conference. I would like you here that you write what you take away with yourself. Because I think every time we have an experience like this, you have something that you are taking with you, an insight or an experience, something that you want to somehow to remind to yourself as an important experience, as an important thing. So this is the scope of this magnet, and then you will put somewhere, and every time you will look to this, you will remember that experience, and then somehow link your emotion, your experience, your environment that you feel here in Matera, and then the ethics, the value connected to this place, and also the engagement to our community and our work. So thank you for being here, and I really wish you 2 fantastic and a half days, and I assure you that we will do the best to enjoy these next 2 days. So thank you, and now I would like to move to the next. Okay, you can give me a play. This is part of the game. Okay, now I would like to move to the first key speech for the conference, and I would like to invite Steve Selby to join us from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And maybe it's better, Roberto, if you can do that, please. And Stephen will be presenting. Will be presenting the title of his presentation is Innovation, Sustainability, and Intellectual Capital from Chinese Perspective. So Steve spent a lot of time in China. So we asked him to bring the experience of IC in China and give us some insight about this. Thank you very much, Steve. And here, the floor is yours.
Right, I have a microphone and a weapon. Firstly, thank you very much. I'd like particularly to say how much I appreciate the hard work done by Giovanni and Gabriella in bringing us all together and making such perfect arrangements. I also bring you a greeting from my boss, Professor W.B. Lee, who should have been here but unfortunately had to attend another event. But anyway, greetings from the KMIRC, the Knowledge Management and Innovation Research Centre of Hong Kong Polytechnic University. I'm going to tell not a success story. I'm going to tell the story as I see it of innovation, sustainability and intellectual capital in China. And as you will see, I've been engaged in China for quite a long time, approximately 40 years. And I thought that I'd start off with some of my holiday snaps. Let me see whether I have a... my first time in China was in 1973. Nixon was there about 5 months before I was. So I was in China for my first time in the Cultural Revolution for to appreciate the anti-Confucius, anti-Lin Biao campaign. Lin Biao was Mao Zedong's deputy, who was then considered to have plotted against Mao Zedong and tried to run away, rather unsuccessfully, in a plane and crashed in Mongolia. And there was a typical shop, probably as good as you could find in Peking and Beijing in 1973. And this is what you would find if you go to Beijing today. This is the area, I'm sorry this is not very bright, I hope you can see it, the area next to Hong Kong called Shenzhen, as it was when I first went over the border in 1973. Just off picture was a bicycle shed with a slogan from Chairman Mao. This is Shenzhen now, it's a busy commercial area, one of the leading commercial areas in China. 1973, here we are in Jinan Iron and Steel, 1973. Soviet equipment, the Russians had left at the end of the 1950s. they had taken everything with them. They had taken with them all the instruction manuals for all the equipment. The staff who were left there had meeting after meeting trying to remember what had been in the instruction manuals, and doing an enormous knowledge management exercise to make sure that they could keep the equipment going. And in fact, much of the innovation in the steel industry was actually built around trying to stop the machinery breaking down. Here in Jinan Iron Steel, this is all controlled by Siemens company equipment. The grinding and this is hot rolling steel, plant in from Japan. This is what it looks like. You might not feel that there's a huge difference, but this is what it's like now. Schools, I was studying education in China in 1973. There wasn't much going on. Could forget universities. Every university student was out working in the fields and in the country. Most of the university staff had been criticised and sent to look after pigs. Many had committed suicide. Some of them were beaten to death as a result of the campaigns in the Cultural Revolution. And you had to be both read and expert to become an academic in China in 1973. Here's a nice little school now. I've chosen this picture of Deqin in Yunnan province. Even though it doesn't look very different, the way the children are grouped, the way that the teaching materials are being used, the whole feel of a school now in a primary school is completely different from the way it is when the little red guards in their red ties were at school learning the quotations of Chairman Mao back then. Quality of life, particularly for women, although there were great strides in the Cultural Revolution for equality for women, this is basically what women would be expecting to be doing. In 1973, I have just lost my power to the mic, so I hope you can hear me. Now they're quite likely to be sitting in a hotel, having their photograph taken, and I may have just pressed something wrong by mistake. I don't know whether that is. But as you can see, the quality of life in China, the amount of leisure, the ability to... I just pressed the wrong button. Are we there? Yes. It's just completely different, particularly the amount of time for leisure and therefore the amount of time for sharing and arguably for innovation has increased dramatically. We all know of China as being the world's factory. So where have we got to in terms of China's economic situation? There is a huge growth in markets for China's product, but because of the general improvement of the standards of living worldwide, this huge growth is not growth for high-end value-added product. It's still a huge growth in demand for low-end manufactured products. That is where the real growth is. We might, as knowledge workers ourselves, always focus on the high end, but we must always remember that in economic terms, what the world wants, what the people who are newly able to consume in India and Africa and South America are the low-end products that China and many Asian economies are able to produce. That is, the demand is for goods manufactured by less skilled workers. Nevertheless, the traditional labor base in China, in areas like I told you about Shenzhen, the area just next to Hong Kong, that labor base was migrant workers not from another country, but from the villages and the countryside who had come to work in the cities and filled the China sweatshops. But these people are becoming more and more demanding of higher wages and better working conditions, as we can witness from the demands, that series of suicides in Foxconn in China, the manufacturers of many of the components of the Apple iPad and iPhone. There were a series of suicides, do you remember that? And that brought into focus the demands being made by migrant workers for better working conditions. And now Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, but it translated directly into pressure from the central government of China to improve conditions in factories. And it certainly for the higher end value-added products, you cannot any longer demand sweatshop conditions. So the demand has, from the majority of the workforce, is higher wages and better working conditions. So wages for migrant workers, this is from the chief Asian economist of Credit Suisse, 30% to 40% increase in wages last year. And it is likely to continue every year for the next 3 to 5 years, from a low base, of course, from a low base. And more of these children are getting access to education. It used to be that there was a great prejudice in the Chinese cities against the children of migrant workers, and there was a registration system which was prejudicial against them. But this has now broken down. Migrant workers are getting better access to education. So we are not going to see a second generation of migrant workers. Their children, these migrant workers, the migrant workers themselves were probably primary school level only. Their children will definitely be secondary, and many are getting into university. And the supply of labour is not being replenished from the countryside. In fact, there is a dearth of young people in the countryside. Those that can migrate have migrated. Those that were left behind are older people who are not producing more children to come and replenish the workforce. So this is the challenge that Chinese industrial society is facing at the moment. And here is a projection which has been done by the ILO. And as we can see here, we're at a crossover point where it is thought, for the reasons that I've just explained, that the demand for labour in China is about to exceed the supply. Now remember what I said about the demand. The demand is for the lower end goods. And that is the bulk, economically, of the world's demand. And that demand is going to increase faster than the supply of labour in China, which is able to manufacture those goods at the price that the market is prepared to pay. So this manufacture, this lower-end manufacture, is increasingly moving to South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I'm sure we're going to see more in Myanmar now, if there's more investment in Myanmar. And also there are political pressures growing on the old model. What I'm discussing here is the old model, China as the world's factory. I'm sorry, this is really dark. I'll read it out. The wealth gap, that is workers and unskilled labourers, agriculture and unskilled labour, as opposed to entrepreneurs and skilled graduate civil servants. This wealth gap has become more and more acute, giving rise to stronger political pressure on the Central People's Government. Do not believe for a moment that the Central People's Government of China is not responsive to popular pressure. It is extremely spooked by the wealth gap and by the type of political pressure that is placed on it. China's air quality falls far short of WHO standards. This is something that everybody knows. But to experience it, if you go into a rust belt manufacturing area, it is quite terrifying. I have walked through this sort of environment very, very frequently. And China is now the biggest emitter in the world of greenhouse gases, although when it ever comes to any discussions internationally, China will immediately say, but the biggest per capita emitter is the USA. And the USA says, but China's the biggest emitter, and China says, they have this argument backwards and forwards. But it is a political pressure, and it is a pressure which is coming out of the Chinese people. Response, nominally, therefore,